Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau. And if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that we are kicking off a new summer series that I am very, very excited about. So as many of you know who have been longtime listeners, I've been focusing a lot of my work in the past couple of years about the Enneagram. We talk about it a lot. We'll reference it and how it relates to people's relationship with clutter and organization on all different levels. And about 2 years ago, when I was just kind of getting into this, I had done a series right back then, and it was wildly popular. I got lots of emails and DMs and people saying, this is so great, so fascinating, we want to have more of this. So I felt now is the time. I thought summer's a good time for us to really be unpacking this. And I know I kind of weave it in here and there, but I thought, why don't we go through each of the Enneagram types, have guests on that can speak to their experience as that type, use their own language to give some insight and perspective into the characteristics of that particular type and how they relate, respond, react to clutter and organization. So I am very, very excited for my Enneagram 1 guest. So joining me today is Andrew Lang. And Andrew is an Enneagram. He's like an Enneagram expert. For any of you who are familiar with the Enneagram, he learned and studied under Richard Rohr, who is like the holy grail of the Enneagram. So, I mean, just talk about I'm like 2 degrees of separation from Richard Rohr, which is kind of a big deal. And Andrew is also an author. His new book is going to be coming out. We're going to talk about that. And he's an Enneagram 1, which identifies as the perfectionist or the improver. And we're going to let him talk about that. And when I mentioned that I was going to be doing this series, he said, I would love to come on and talk about this. And I thought it would be great to hear not only from somebody that comes from the Enneagram world, not so much the clutter and organization world, but also a guy. I love having other perspectives other than a lot of my women, because I think that sometimes it's nice to be able to learn from other people in other walks of life. And so I'm very, very excited to welcome my new friend, Andrew, to the show. So welcome, Andrew.
Oh, it's so good to be here. I'm so happy and excited for the good conversation.
Yes, this is great. And I did say to you, and for anybody that's listening, I apologize in advance. Hopefully I will not cough. I woke up with some allergies. Thought it might be COVID, but it wasn't. So I just have a little bit of congestion or whatnot.
Something.
So hopefully something. So I'm going to let you do most of the heavy lifting and talking today. Welcome to the show. Very excited to have you here. Gave our listeners a real top line overview, but just in your own words, tell them a little bit about who you are, and then we can talk about, the Enneagram.
Oh, so good. So my name's Andrew Lang. I am a trained high school teacher and educator. I'm now working in the nonprofit world, but I've been a teacher for most of the last 7 years. And then on my days off or in the evenings, I run workshops and facilitate classes, really focusing on inner work. A lot of the stuff I consider shadow work, but it's really in line with the Enneagram. Questions of who am I really? How can I unpeel the layers of my personality to understand what really makes me tick? What are the parts of me that are deep in there that maybe I cover up? So I do a lot of work with folks around that. And then I am an Enneagram 1. So part of that is just looking out into the world and seeing all the things that need to be fixed, and trying to hold myself back.
I was gonna say, and just try to like bite your tongue and be like, I'm not going to do that. So how did you get into the Enneagram? Give us your kind of story. Walk us through that, and then we'll get into your Enneagram type. But I'm just curious what your story is.
Yeah. I got into the Enneagram through books. I've been thinking about this just kind of in the lead up to today. I believe that I was handed a Richard Rohr Enneagram book years and years ago. This is probably 2013, 2014. And I was handed the book and I basically did nothing with it. It sat on my bookshelf for a year or two. And then I was listening to one of his classes online or one of his videos online, and he mentioned it 3, 4, 5 times. And I thought, well, what the heck is this thing? I know I have that book. And so I went back to it, and it was just resonance. The second I started reading, which I know is the story a lot of people have, where they read about their type, and for the first time, they see an author or they hear someone saying words that they themselves could have said.
Totally.
That was my big introduction. It was just, I heard about it, I started reading it, and then I think I had a choice to make. And that is that the Enneagram is often used kind of as like that party trick.
Totally.
Take this test, what type are you? And the choice I had to make was, do I want to use it as that? Or do I want to start using it as a tool to really examine my life? And so I took the second path, and that's pretty much what's led me down the lane of leading workshops and classes, all that. Yeah.
I love it. And I often say the same thing. I mean, I think it's great conversation starters. Like, it's fun to say, oh, this is what, this is my type, or I used to do it with Myers-Briggs, right? So but I didn't do anything with it. It was like, I knew it,
Yeah.
but then what do I do with that? How do I apply it? And what I love about the Enneagram, especially in the work that we do here, is how can we use our strengths? How can we use the areas where we're struggling to be a healthier version of ourselves, specifically in the areas that hold us back with clutter, organization, and all of the other ripple effects that come with that? Because understanding it, so much of what we do has to do with motivation. And obviously that's the
Exactly.
Enneagram.
That's it. And I think that's another aspect of why the Enneagram connected with me so quickly, is that I know, so as a 1, I'm known as like reformer, perfectionist, there's all these different labels.
Yes. I was going to say, why don't you tell our listeners that aren't familiar, give us an overview of what you are, or a description of what the Enneagram 1 is.
Yeah. So the 1 is known as the reformer, the perfectionist. And those are labels for it. I prefer to think of the Enneagram 1 through a couple kind of key elements of what makes my brain work the way it does. And that is, 1 is around motivation. And my motivation is largely built around wanting to prove myself as good enough. And that is a core element of Enneagram 1. So for those of you that, that is a core part of who you are, trying to strive, trying to figure out a way to show that you're good enough, or trying to run away from the feeling of not being good enough. That is a 1 through and through. We have another core element of the Enneagram 1 is this idea of like, we have this inner critic that's constantly.
I want to talk about your inner critic.
Oh,
my
man.
girlfriend, does your inner critic have a name?
No, it doesn't. I've thought about naming it, but I have like actively been like, maybe I don't need to do that today.
Okay. My friend has, and I asked her, because I'm in the process of writing my book on Enneagram and clutter. And I said, can I use your, can I use your name, or do you need me to do anything else? She's like, no, you can use my name. And I said, did you ever name her? She goes, yeah. I go, what's her name? She's like, Medusa.
Oh my, of course. That's so good. I have a friend who has named hers, but she's named her inner critic just the inner snark. And so whenever we're talking and that critic kind of raises its head in her, she goes, oh, my inner snark is talking again.
and explain to people how that inner critic presents itself. Because I think it's a really key part, and it's very important. And again, especially as we connect the dots with the stuff that we're doing, I see it come up time and time again when I know somebody's an Enneagram 1 and how the approach might differ with an Enneagram 1 than it would with a different type on, so
Yeah.
just speak into that a little bit.
Yeah. So for some ones, the inner critic has a name, it has a distinct voice. And for some ones, it doesn't. For me, there's a reason I haven't named mine. It doesn't have a distinct voice. It's more of a feeling. But for both of these, what the inner critic really shows up as is when we go through our day-to-day life, the inner critic shows up as a should monster, so this voice in us that's, you should do this, you should do that. This is the right way to do it. This is the wrong way. And if you step out of line, that inner critic gets louder and louder and says, dang it, why did you do that? Look at what's going to happen now. Or for me, I first really noticed my inner critic. I was going through some rough stuff in my personal life, and I would go on these long walks. And I would find after, walking 4, 5, 6 blocks, I wouldn't remember any of the things I'd walked past because my inner critic had just been having a conversation the whole time. Wow. And it would be like going through what I could have done differently. So I'd be replaying parts of, what have been happening in my life, just going, or I'd be thinking towards the future. When I go to work and I deal with this boss I don't love, what are the things I should do? And it's just brutal.
Wow.
It's just
yeah,
brutal.
I know. I feel badly. Now, I also want to make a distinction for people. So this need to improve, and please correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because you obviously know way better than I do. This need to improve is very much self-inflicted. It's like your responsibility, not I'm trying to improve other people. I'm just trying to I'm holding myself to this unachievable standard. It's not that I'm walking into a room and I'm saying, you should do this and you should do that and you should do that.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. But here's how it shows itself as a little bit of both.
Okay.
90% of it is internal. It's me shoulding myself. It's me saying all the ways that I need to be better. But if I'm not aware of that, what happens when I walk into a space? I project that outwardly, right? When I walk into a space, so I'll give an example. When I walk into a school building, one of the things that I think is just uniquely mine is I care a lot about physical space. And so when I walk into a school building that doesn't have good signage or good lighting, or doesn't feel, just safe and wonderful, I immediately start thinking, this needs to change. This needs to change. This needs to change.
Right.
And so I do have that component, but yes, that is really manifesting as just some of my inner work that I haven't done yet.
Gotcha. No. And I think to a healthy degree, it's okay to be able to walk in and say things could be improved. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's when do you cross the line to be a judgment where it takes over? I think that's the key. And now I was going to ask you, so as an educator, because I want to talk about how your Enneagram 1 motivations and your behaviors play out when it comes to your physical space, when it comes to, I know my one friend, like she does like clutter as she gets like prickly, it does not, I'd say some people are, really sensitive to clutter, and other people are like clutter-blind, where they could just walk past that sink full of dirty dishes and toys on the floor and whatnot. I haven't found that to be the case with ones. I've seen ones being very hypersensitive to that. And I'm wondering what your experience is, if you could talk about that.
I mean, yeah, all of that. I'll give a very real example for me right now. 2-3 days ago, my tire blew out while I was driving to work. And so I had to empty out pretty much everything in my trunk to get to the spare tire. Then I loaded it all back in. But when I got home, I emptied it all out again. And so currently in my living room, I can see it from where I'm sitting right now. There's just a giant pile of like a golf bag, tennis balls, tennis racket. And I haven't had enough time in the last 2 days to like clean it up. But this morning when I walked out and I saw it, I just immediately went, ooh,
Yeah.
This aggression will not stand. I must do something here. So probably the second we get done with this, I will put all of that stuff back into my trunk.
That is so funny. Now, were you like that as a child too? Was this something that you feel you can look back now, and did you have an organized physical space?
There was definitely a right way and a wrong way to do things when I was a child.
Okay.
I think, and this is an aspect that I think has been uncovered more and more. When I was a happy kid, I was a happy kid. And when ones are healthy and happy, a lot of that need for control, need for, everything to be the right way, it goes into the background. So
Yeah.
when I'm super happy, you will just see someone laughing and humming and singing. And I think that's how I really was as a kid. Where it started showing up was in high school and into college, when I started having those questions of who am I? My faith and my religion had broken apart at that point. So a lot of these like systems and belief systems that I had flux. And that's when you started seeing me identifying, no, things need to be this way. I need to make a spreadsheet for this.
Yes. Love me a good spreadsheet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I think it is when we look at when we feel out of control in other areas of our lives, we try to control what we can. And a lot of times that manifests in your physical stuff. It manifests in, your space, whether that's loading the dishwasher a certain way, making the beds, doing, your regular day-to-day household chores. Oh, the towels need to be folded this way versus it's not just good enough that they're folded. They have to be folded and set. And again, I'm very much stereotyping people, I think, but I'm just trying to give some broad stroke, like images for where, when you're not healthy, it can manifest in these types of behaviors. Now, I'm curious. So you're, as a teacher, even though you're not currently teaching, as an educator, how does that play out with your students? Because you don't have kids of your own, correct?
Yeah, no, I do not.
Okay. I was going to say, so I can't speak to the parent, that the parent relationship, but as an educator, and you were teaching high school, which you kind of look like a high school teacher. You have that like warm, inviting high school teacher look to you. I was like, yeah,
excellent.
How did that help you with your students, and where do you feel like it maybe was a little bit stressful?
I'll say the first thing is what all my co-teachers always laughed about. I am the first one on campus. Always. And part of that was get to school an hour early because there will be chaos. So be prepared for it. And I think that was part of that was a defense mechanism that I know a lot of ones have. Just how did we be overly prepared? I think with my students, a lot of it was, it has so much to do with inner work. Mm-hmm. I came into teaching right as I really began therapy and began focusing on how do I become a healthier me. And so one of the things I had to face most days in the classroom was this desire for things to be right or wrong. And then recognizing and squaring that with the fact that actually in spaces where high school kids are, that there is so much more nuance.
Yes.
And there is so much more chaos, and it's messy. And so part of my work as showing up as a one, showing up as who I am, was to recognize what are my internal narratives that are healthy in a specific instance, and what are the ones I need to let go of. And here's an example. I had a student a few years ago who had a pregnancy scare. And she comes to me because I'm like the one teacher on campus who I'm always open to talk about pretty much anything. She's just like, Mr. Lang, what am I going to do right now? Like, what is this? And we sat down and we were just chatting, and I felt my inner narrative start going around, these are the things I was taught about teenage pregnancy. These are the things I was taught, and recognizing that moment that like, that's my stuff. Right. That's not my student stuff. What I can do here is set aside that inner critic, that inner monologue, those inner narratives, and just give myself to listening, and just give myself to being with this student in her moment of crisis and fear. And so I think as a one stepping into spaces with students and spaces with young people, it's really a lot of setting down the inner narratives that are going on so that you can experience or try to experience more of what they are experiencing and just listening. Because I think that's where good advice comes from. It's not from a space of trying to fix or advise, really. It's from a place of listening and mirroring probably the answer that person already knows or already has in them. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I think it's a perfect place for us to take our quick break, and then we're going to come back and continue our conversation with Andrew. So sit tight. So Andrew, in our space, and I think this will be interesting just because of the work that you were doing as a teacher and looking at clutter and organization as more than just the physical stuff. It is also has to do with what I call emotional clutter, which is like guilt and fear, but it's also what I call calendar clutter, which has to do with organizing your time, not overscheduling yourself, not overcommitting. And, I think every Enneagram type has the capacity, the ability to get sucked into any three of those, any configuration of physical, emotional, or calendar clutter. But I think there are certain types that lend itself towards, one is more dominant than another. And I'm just curious, in your experience as an Enneagram 1, which one of those three types of clutter resonates with you most?
Oof.
If you need me to explain them a little bit more, I can, but
no, I think that's good.
Okay.
I want to say time. And the reason I want to say time is that for me, there's never enough. And I know that's true for lots of people. There's never enough time. But what's unique, I think, about ones is that it's not just that there's not enough time, is that there's not enough time to prove myself worthy, or there's not enough time to be the good person that I want to be. And so a lot of it is mixed up, not just in there's not enough time to, cook dinner, but there's not enough time to cook dinner and therefore I have failed. And there's this like added piece to it. And so I think time, and I'd also say guilt. Those two things I think go hand in hand for me. Is, I care deeply about honoring other people's time and honoring my own time. And when that doesn't happen, or when I don't rise to the bar that I've randomly set for myself,
Sure.
I will should myself. I will guilt myself for not doing enough, not being enough. And I think that's where the work for me really comes in, is letting myself, I think two parts. There's the survival mechanism for me. If I know that about myself, how can I provide myself more time to do things?
Right.
So like, I think of, for me, a lot of my friends laugh about the fact that I use a project management tool for my normal day-to-day life, like the thing that they use at Microsoft and all the big tech companies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's too real. But without it,
it works. It allows, but it helps you set boundaries. It probably helps you with setting boundaries and saying, I assigned this amount of this block of time for this task or this project or whatever. And then now I can release myself of that without having to revise, improve.
Yes, 100%. And I think it pairs nicely with, I usually over allot myself time chunks to get things done. And it's because of a quote I heard years ago. And I don't know who said it originally, but it's, every expectation is a resentment waiting to happen.
Oh my gosh, so true.
So it's just, and it hit me like a ton of bricks the moment I heard it, because I thought about my time and how much, when I expect, I've got 30 minutes to get this done. And if that doesn't happen, I will instantly, usually not, I won't know I'm doing it, but I will start building resentment for whatever or whoever got in the way of that task getting done, because it's not about the task. It's about me. It's about my goodness. Right.
Because your worth in your mind is tied to and I think that's so fascinating. And so when I talk to people, a lot of times when it comes to the clutter organization piece, a lot of times a lot of the ones that I've talked to will say, I feel like I just need to do it all till they hit their breaking point. I'm doing this. I'll make dinner and I will do all the laundry and I will run to carpool and I will do all these things and have this checklist, and they'll put it in Asana and they'll have it all checked off. And then all of a sudden you hit this wall and you're like done. And then it's just, everyone has their breaking point. And so as opposed to being able to say, it's okay, I can delegate this to somebody else. I can relinquish control. I don't have to do that. So what are some strategies that you have used that you can maybe share? Because I'm sure there's people that are listening to this going, oh my gosh, that is me. So now how can we help these people? Obviously the work has to come from within yourself, but what are some things that you've done to set those healthy boundaries?
Yeah, I'll share two tools that have really, really helped for me. And these are both tools that I teach in my classes. So the first is there's a growing field of work, especially in therapy, called somatics. And it's this idea that our body is connected to our emotions, it's connected to our brain. And so, our body is not just a vehicle for our brain to move around. And so the first tool that has really helped me is whenever I feel stressed, or I start thinking like, oh, I'm getting out of control a little bit, I check in with my body. What am I feeling right now? Or I ask myself the question of, where am I tense? And almost every time my shoulders have tensed up, or for me, I grind my teeth quite a bit. And so
I'm a teeth grinder. I'm not an Enneagram 1, but I am a teeth grinder.
Oh yeah. So. I mean, it's definitely like it's definitely a thing. So I think the first one is body check-ins. Whenever you feel stressed or out of control, check in with yourself. What is your body doing right now? Because the body is always just giving you flags. The body is a good thing for you. It's just giving you flags. What are you feeling? And then the second tool kind of goes hand in hand with it. And it's a phrase I heard a long time ago. And it goes like this: it is what it is. And how can I be present with it in a loving way?
Ooh,
and
I like that.
Yeah. And that has, what's great about it is that it can work internally and externally. So whenever you notice an emotion come up, or whenever I notice, something in the world, an injustice that I see, I start with saying, all right, it is what it is. Let's get a good idea of what are the actual things that are happening and that people are experiencing, or that I'm experiencing. And then not how can I fix it or save it or correct it, but how can I be with that experience, with the people who are in that, or with myself, with that emotion, in a loving way that's healing, not harming. So I think those are two tools that I use pretty regularly.
I love it. I think that's great. And I do want to just also, I'm curious about something that you said earlier, and I wanted to come back to it when you were talking about showing up like an hour early for school, or being the first person there. I've also found punctuality to be very, very important to Enneagram 1s for themselves and for other people. And it's funny, my husband's an Enneagram 3, and he is, but punctuality is a really big thing for him. And my daughter, who's a 4, has no concept of time.
Yeah.
At all. None. I don't know if it's a 4 thing or that's just a her thing, but it is like and punctuality is just something that, and I don't know, for me, because I value punctuality and time, and I had always attributed it just to the fact of what I do for a living. And like, I just have all these organizing practices, not even really factoring in the Enneagram part of it. But I'm wondering if you see some connection point between that responsibility and respect for other people's time and your Enneagram type.
Oh yeah. So when I am late, I start spinning. I refer to it as my tornado. If I am late to an event or late to something, I will immediately start going down this, just like, why did you do that? Why didn't you plan more? Why didn't you, a lot of shoulds, right?
Yes.
And so I think punctuality has a direct connection there. And I want to name that the thing that really opened the Enneagram up for me, instead of seeing all these different numbers and types as, boxes, right, is that all of us have all this stuff in us, right? We're whole people. it's just these types are what we, for one reason or another, and there's lots of theory on how this has happened. These types are just, for one reason or another, what we lean into through or been led more in our life because of our childhood experiences, our wounds, stuff that happened to us, middle school age, right? And so I think for me, when I think about time and punctuality, a lot of that just comes down to, I'm still just trying to prove myself.
Yeah.
I'm still just trying to prove to other people that, that I'm worth being in the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That is so good. What would be, and again, I know you're not a parent, but you were an educator. And so working with kids and watching and observing their development, what's some advice or strategies that you can suggest to people? Because for me, I didn't learn the Enneagram until my kids were grown. So I had already screwed them up beyond repair. Like there's not enough therapy. And, I'm like, oh God, if I could have, like, now that I know the Enneagram, I'm like, oh, I could not have said a worse thing to you as an Enneagram 9 than, stand up for yourself. Like, what? So, but if there are parents out there that are listening that still have the opportunity to learn this as a tool for themselves and how to relate with other people, and maybe they suspect their kid is a 1, what can you offer to them of how to help nurture them to be a healthy version of themselves?
Yeah. What comes to mind immediately is, one, don't try to type your kid when they're like 3 years old.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So true.
So
yes.
There's so much danger in going around, and this goes for not just kids, but anybody going around and like force typing people is so damaging. So don't do that. I think the biggest thing for parents when they are working with the Enneagram as a relationship tool, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out how can I support or nourish my child. I think honestly, the biggest thing is to do the inner work for your type. Yeah. The biggest thing you can do to help your kid is to show up as the best you that you can. And I think that goes hand in hand with, and listen. Yes. I'll name for my, I have a couple friends who are parents and are Enneagram 1s. And what they often experience, and this is not unique to 1s, what they often experience is this feeling of, the child does something ridiculous and the parent immediately thinks they shouldn't do that, or that's wrong, or that's, and so there's this jump to correct. And I think, one, from the educational lens and child development lens, we know actually, like, that can be really damaging when a parent steps in and starts saying this is right and this is wrong, to basic childhood behavior of exploring their bodies and exploring the world. I think from an Enneagram 1 perspective, when you see something that maybe goes against what you're trying to, teach your child, have the conversation and open the conversation with a question. What are you thinking when you do this? Why do you do this? Because if we can learn one thing from community development, folks who are community organizers, there's a saying that says questions are more important than answers. And with kids, that is everything, because by asking a question, you're honoring their voice, you're honoring their experience. So I would say to parents,
so good.
Start with the experience of your child with asking a question, and just hold off on your own inner stuff. Hold that part of you back until you've worked with it and what a healing and positive response might look like.
I love it. Oh my gosh. So good. I love this. Okay. We are going to take one more quick break. Then we're going to before we take our break, tell our listeners, tell us about your book. Where can they find you? I want you to plug that away because we didn't even talk about that. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about your book. We didn't get a chance to that. And then we'll go to our last break. So talk away.
Yeah. So my book is coming out in November of this year, so 2022. It's titled Unmasking the Inner Critic, Lessons for Living an Unconstricted Life. So it's basically this conversation.
I was like, could this not be more perfect? I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, it's so rooted in my experience with the Enneagram, but also my experience with just going through the world and what are the spiritual teachings that help people move through their fears. And that's what the book is really about. It's looking at 9 of the core fears that humans experience. So I'm not good enough, I'm not in control, I'm not lovable, and what different spiritual teachers from different traditions have taught to move through those fears. And I think the one piece that's really unique for me and important for me is that a lot of people approach these things at an intellectual level, and the intellectual level is not ultimately transformative often. We've got it's about embodiment, right? It's about embodiment. So throughout the book, there are body practices that'll help you move through some of those fears. There are journaling questions and prompts to help you process. And really, it's a book. I've been telling people when I first started writing it and I realized it was going to be a book, I had this thought that for the first time in my life, I'm writing something very much for me, from me, and then realizing, oh, and this will be good for others too.
And
so
exactly, I love it. That's amazing. I think it's so good. And again, I love what you said, because I say this all the time. The Enneagram, just like there are so many other things, but the Enneagram is a great tool to use. And when you're talking about relationships, whether it's interpersonal relationships, whether it's relationships at work, whether it's relationships with clutter and organization and how that manifests itself, having that understanding and having language to be able to apply is so helpful, because a lot of times we just don't have the language. And we know we feel a certain way, or we think a certain way, or we're acting a certain way, but we don't know how to articulate that. And so for me, what I love about the Enneagram is it's given me language and it's given me context to be able, and then people are like, yes, that's it. And then once you can understand that, and you can then temper your approach to lean into that person and really maximize their strengths. So
much. I immediately think,
go
before we go to break, this is my final thing.
No, go ahead.
What I hear there, and I think it's so vital, is when you have a word to describe an experience, all of a sudden you can notice that experience more, right? You're like, oh, that's my inner critic. And so I think that's also part of the work. If nothing else, start naming the experiences you have so that you can recognize them more. So good.
Yes, I love it. It's so good. Absolutely. All right. Now we are going to take a break. We'll be right back, and we're going to just put you in the hot seat for our wrap-up questions. All right. This has been such a insightful conversation. I love it. I could talk about the Enneagram all day long, but I want to ask you the questions that we ask all of our guests at the end of our episodes. So obviously you've inspired us, and I know that there's a lot of work that you've read that has been inspirational in your life. What book, and it could be lighthearted, it could be serious, whatever, is there a book that is one that you go back to, or that if somebody were to say, what's been transformational in my life, what is that book?
Ooh, I was actually thinking about a different one, but then you said that you go back to, and so I'll name the book that I go back to the most, and that has been really deeply transformational for me. It's a book called Wild Mercy by Mirabai Starr. And the book really looks at, I can't remember the subtitle from my head, but it's all about what feminine manifestations of divinity there have been in lots of different cultures, lots of different spiritualities. I think the subtitle is Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics.
Wow, that you remember that off the top of your head. We're going to link up to it. Don't worry, because we're going to link up to all the things. So
it's so good though. I cannot recommend that book enough.
Okay, good.
It just touched my heart in so many ways.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. And I selfishly ask that question because I always am looking for good book recommendations. So I'm like, oh, yay.
Of course.
And then in this particular season of your life, because there are some areas where we are thriving and feeling really organized. And there are other times where we feel like a little bit of a hot mess. And maybe your hot mess moment is the pile of golf clubs sitting to your left. I don't know, but where do you feel like you're really thriving right now in the world of like organization? And where do you feel like you need a little TLC?
The TLC is, I'll start with that one. It's definitely in my physical space right now. It's the golf clubs. It's the fact that I haven't mopped the floor in a couple weeks. I've been on the move. So I've got some physical space that today is going to be a cleanup day.
Gotcha.
I think I'm feeling really amazing though in my professional life. Once again, this is very Enneagram 1, but my project board is full of accomplishable tasks, easy things, maybe not easy, but like things that I know I can do in a timely manner. And so when I look out into the next week, 2 weeks, I feel really good right now. I'm feeling organized. I'm feeling ready to go.
That's awesome. I love that. So, well, thank you. And just tell, I know we'll put it in the show notes, but give everyone your website too, because I'm not sure if you mentioned that. So just give them your website for anyone that's listening.
Y'all can reach me at andrewglang.com, and then also on Instagram at my handle is Andrew G. Lang as well.
You got it. All right. And of course, we'll have all things Andrew Lang in our show notes, podcast page, wherever, on YouTube and in all your podcast apps. So Andrew, thank you so much. Thank you for kicking off this series. I'm super excited.
Thank you.
To have you here. I think it's going to be great. We're going to have lots of people coming from different perspectives and different walks of life, talking about their experiences with understanding the Enneagram. So I hope you tune in next week when we actually have a 2-3 combo coming to us. So make sure you tune in for that. And if this is your first time tuning into our show, make sure you click the subscribe button or follow, whatever they're calling it these days, so that you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media and shoot us a note. If there's an episode that you would like to hear, topic, we always want to hear from you. So until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love by sharing it with your friends. And if this is your first time tuning in, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so that you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. Head on over to YouTube and make sure that you follow us there as well. We record interviews, videos, and conversations with all of our guests. And again, if you want to learn more about our product offerings, feel free to visit us at simplybeorganized.com, where you